Okay, so I've never actually done anything like this before, but making these best soldiers, ninjas, the Outlanders and the Constructors videos has been quite the task for me. The initial recording for this was a very long hour, and I thought it would be fun to split these into 4 separate episodes because it's a lot of content to handle, and I think it would be best if they were split up initially, but I also wanted to add in a bit of a supercut, which is exactly what this is. It's not a bit of an anything. It's all of it in one video. And if you've already seen all 4 of these videos, then you absolutely don't need to watch this. And if you've already seen any of these videos individually, but you haven't seen the others, timestamps will be below. There will be a lot of timestamps for every single hero from all 4 of the videos sectioned from soldiers to ninjas to outlanders to constructors. It's a lot to watch, and that's why the timestamps are there. By no means do you have to watch the entire thing. I just wanted to put this here as one mega cut of all 4 of the videos. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, you guys, let's talk about heroes. So as I'm recording this, it is October 24th, the day before the Gravedigger had just come to the game, and I want to get a few things out of the way right off the bat. Everything in this video, or in these future videos, I haven't decided if this will be a 4-part series on all the hero classes, or if I'm just going to do one monster video that'll probably end up being more than 45 minutes long. I don't know yet, so if there are any weird cuts at some point, like at the end of the video and in the future episodes, then now you understand. But I want to get it out of the way right away that everything in these videos are going to be my personal opinion based on a lot of experience. So I haven't played this game as much as the next guy necessarily, but I am Power 131. I've been playing for a year and a half now, and I would like to think I know my stuff. And there are a lot of factors that go into what makes a best hero, and I'm going to say it right off the bat, there isn't one. There is no best hero for anything. For any main class. There are certain best heroes for if you want to run around really, really fast. There is literally no other hero that buffs your movement speed straight up. There are a couple of Outlanders that buff your phase shift speed, but you see what I mean? Like, already, as I've picked my one example of a best hero, there's already other options. So, there is no one best hero. It absolutely depends on what you are doing. And that's why I've decided to either break this series down or this video down into the 4 sections of all the different heroes. I favorited many of the heroes that I want to talk about in these sections, and so there's a lot to cover. And I wanted to start with the most important stuff and work my way down. So for soldiers, I'll give you an example of what I've got set aside here. I've got a lot of the main soldiers that do exactly what a soldier should do. Now, the basic idea for soldiers is that they are really, really good for damage. So, I mean, if you put on a soldier like, you know, Rescue Trooper Ramirez or Havoc or Sledgehammer, these guys are just going to buff your straight up damage and your crit damage, and that's kind of what a soldier should do. However, there are some other more fun options. If you want to do, say, a grenade loadout, I got a video on that, link below. This Battlehound Jonesy isn't somebody I'd ever recommend for any reason, but if you are going to make a grenade loadout, I believe I still have mine constructed here, then he's pretty integral. But a grenade loadout is very gimmicky and not really the topic of today's video because it's not the best for anything other than dinking around when you've got a Stonewood V-Buck mission. So let's start from the very, very tippity top and get something out of the way right away. Rescue Trooper Ramirez and Sledgehammer will be treated as equals in these series because they effectively are. So if you're doing this yourself, this bonuses tab is something that's fairly well hidden. I don't know that many people use it. I often forget about it, but it's amazing for what we're talking about here because every hero in the entire game is a perk, basically. You should treat every single hero in the entire game as a perk, and then go from there. Like Sledgehammer, yeah, he's a character, and I guess he's got voice commands, dialogue that he might have in game, but effectively, Sledgehammer is going to do this, and this, depending on if he's in your support or your lead. So, let's finally officially start this section. This will be the beginning of soldiers. So, I'm going to timestamp just about everything that I can in the description, so you guys can follow along, and without further ado, let's get into soldiers. So, Rescue Trooper Ramirez is a personal... Oh, what am I doing? Don't show again? How can I upgrade her? She's maxed. Come on, game. So Rescue Trooper Ramirez is probably one of the best soldiers in the game. And I say that with a huge asterisk in saying if you just want to do more damage, Rescue Trooper Ramirez or Havoc, if you did the Twitch Prime event in 2017 or 2018, whenever that came out. He's fairly rare. If you have him, you know, congrats, but he's definitely the same thing as Ramirez. They are identical. So also is Sledgehammer. I'm going to show a bunch of math on screen right now. If you want to give it a read, go for it. But that is our proof. All of the numbers in here are based off of a basic crit damage Hemlock schematic, and you can see that pretty much how you, no matter how you slice it, Sledgehammer and Ramirez balance out in the end to do the exact same damage. That's all I'm going to talk about in this video. If you'd like to discuss it more, our Discord is a fantastic resource. So that being said, Ramirez is a very basic, awesome option. You just buff your damage by 50% in the lead. And personally speaking, is one of my main heroes and kind of why I started with her, because you should know about her. That being said, Sledgehammer is, you know, a perfectly good option, but every time I've ever done the math, he seems to be about 10% better in support. I'm not saying that's flawless math. I haven't put it under nearly as much scrutiny as the commander argument, but he seems to do better in support, and I prefer female characters generally. It's just how I play games, and she's kind of a favorite amongst my friends anyway. I like the soldier dude, but that's preference. That's completely preference, and he is a perfectly good option if you're running a crit loadout as well. So those are the top three right off the bat, but I want to get into one that's not maybe as well known, but that's Rex Jonesy. So you're going to see a common theme throughout all of these parts here, and that is the Dino set. These guys are amazing. So Rex Jonesy is only good under the circumstance that you're using the Blast from the Past team perk. Any of the Dino heroes will give it. So you've got Rex Jonesy, you've got Iza, wherever I can find her, Prehistoric Iza, and then you've got the Paleo Luna, and then we've got the Outlander, which is Fossil Southie. Obviously, regenerating energy and doing more melee damage isn't exactly going to be helping you in a soldier loadout, but if you're going to be using Rex Jonesy, then you're going to want Blast from the Past, because his commander perk is severely limited if you don't have it. 9% of your current health will go towards damage on your next range weapon hit every single second, so Blast from the Past triples your health. So you will do 3 times as much damage if you're running Blast from the Past with Rex Jonesy. Then you can just go ahead and throw on Prehistoric Iza, and I would do Southie. I mean, unless there's some chance that you'll be using a melee weapon, which, hey, if you're going to be fighting a mini-boss that has smokescreen, you might actually want that melee weapon. But ultimately, Rex Jonesy in the lead, 9% of your current health is a lot. So if you're a max level player like I am and you use some 130 heroes in your support, it's not unusual. In fact, if you're playing with a group of higher level players, it's actually quite common that you'll start the mission before you even boost your health at about 1 million. And that makes for very easy math. So 1 million means every 1 second of firing, basically, one of your bullets will do 90,000 extra damage, completely separate to any of your weapon perks. That's effectively take any weapon you're using and just add 90,000 DPS. That's not necessarily as much or more than Rescue Trooper Ramirez. That completely depends on what weapon you're using. But with Rex Jonesy, it's kind of funny that not only does he affect every ranged weapon, whereas he only affects assault and SMGs, you can use a gray pistol, shoot a zombie, and that ranged weapon will add 90,000 damage. So it's a really interesting perk. And I put him right here up at the top because the Dino heroes, I would genuinely consider them to be among the top 4 heroes in the game simply because of Blast from the Past. That is amazing. It's an amazing team perk, and I'll link my video below on exactly everything about that, but that's not exactly the topic of the video. That's a team perk. We're talking about heroes, which are closely related, but not exactly the same thing. Moving on, let's talk about Crackshot and Bulletstorm Jonesy. So you'll see that I'm putting them in the exact same category, even though they're not really the same heroes. They're just very similar. I don't have him favorited because he's purple down here, but Bulletstorm Jonesy and Crackshot are effectively the same thing. So Bulletstorm Jonesy, he ups your ranged weapon damage by 1% up to 25, and then 2% ranged weapon damage up to 25, and he, you know, that's basically the same thing as Crackshot. Crackshot goes up to 50 stacks in your support, and then it just kind of increases your damage a lot. Crackshot in your support goes up to about 150% of a damage buff if you have him in your lead, and that's a lot. You'll be hitting like a truck, but you're pretty much going to need mag size perks or LMGs if you're going to try to be hitting for past 50 bullets consistently. And that added weapon stability is almost irrelevant, especially on PC. PC, all we have to do is pull our mouse down a little bit. I've never ever noticed a difference in stability. I've used Crackshot with and without him in the support. I've used him as my main. I've not used him as my main. I've never felt the difference in that stability. So I consider it a non-factor. And Crackshot basically goes up to 50 stacks, and Bladestorm Jonesy goes up to 25. So Bladestorm Jonesy, in my opinion, is just a weaker version. He stops at 25, and the other guy stops at 50, but they have effectively the same bonus, even though they're slightly different. So a fantastic option nonetheless, but, you know, I really am working from the top down here. And then Skull Ranger Ramirez is one of these interesting points where I wouldn't consider her a commander necessarily, like a contender for a commander, because this fire rate and damage works out to be almost identical. You'll find as I go out throughout this video, the overall damage bonuses between Rescue Trooper Ramirez, Sledgehammer, Crackshot, like almost everybody. I've actually talked to Rounded Tic Tac, shout out to him in DMs about this quite a bit, and we've tested almost every like considerably good soldier, and they almost all work out to be within the margin of you won't notice it, which is negligibility. And that is to say that yes, sure, on a mathematical level, Crackshot is better after 50 shots. Real world, the only time you're hitting 50 shots is if you hate reloading and switching your weapon, or if you're shooting a mini boss. So like it really doesn't make a difference. And then you've got Skull Ranger Ramirez, who has not only limited by the reload, meaning all of this bonus that she gives you needs you to reload, whereas, you know, Rescue Trooper is just active constantly, but it also substitutes actual damage for fire rate. Now, something to be very aware of in Fortnite is a difference when you talk about damage per second. So there are certain situations, I'll head over to my SMGs real quick just to show you that there is something to talk about here. I'm gonna actually pull up my Bobcat. So my Bobcat is crit rating crit damage. That used to be fire rate and damage, and the reason for that was in a per damage per second, you know, head to head, fire rate and damage is identical to crit rating crit damage. The only difference is crit rating crit damage has, you know, obviously the slower fire rate, but it's more damage per bullet rather than, you know, just more damage per second. And that's one of the differences between fire rate and raw damage. So you might not shoot as fast without that fire rate buff, but you're kind of shooting a lot of lesser damage bullets rather than slower, more powerful bullets. In the end, it's kind of the same. In fact, I actually have some weapons that are still fire rate damage simply because I love the fire rate. In fact, I'm looking for the typewriter right now. That's a slow firing weapon just regularly. 11.5 is after that fire rate buff. And so that's a fairly slow firing weapon, but that thing with fire rate is such a joy to use. It just, oh, it sounds amazing. And I'm kind of forgetting that this is a tab. Oh, I should be using this more often in this video. So yeah, Skull Ranger Ramirez, the reason I even brought her up at all is because she's actually pretty good in the support. I would say that she has her use case. I don't personally use her, but that doesn't mean that you guys shouldn't. If you don't have a ton of options, or if you have Skull Ranger Ramirez and you just want her, 5 seconds, by the way, is more than enough time to empty your clip. Any normal weapon with 50 to even 87 bullets and like a somewhat decent fire rate is going to empty its clip in 2 to 4 seconds, depending on your weapon. It absolutely depends. Obviously, if you put like Stars and Stripes Jonesy as your lead, and then you put Liteshow Spitfire in your support, and then you put, you know, all 4 mag perks on your Mercury LMG, like I did in this video description below, you can shoot for 2 minutes straight. That's gonna slightly outlive the 15%, you know, for 5 seconds. 2 minutes is a bit more than 5 seconds, but in any conventional loadout, that's kind of just a joke for the plug. Any conventional loadout, that 5 seconds is gonna be more than enough of time to enjoy that 15% damage buff. So she's a great option, but I think that if you unlock later game heroes and have more availability, then, you know, she might be replaced fairly easily. And that moves us on to First Shot Rio. So I was going to talk about Stars and Stripes Jonesy, but he's kind of a universal character. So I classed him right alongside Survivalist Jonesy, who I never even favorited here. And that's because these two are worth talking about, and boy do I have something to say, but they're going to work in pretty much every situation. I'm just going to talk about damage per second heroes right now, and we'll move on after that. So First Shot Rio is not much to talk about. The only time you'd ever want to use her is if you're using like the not Crackshot. I'm thinking about the Hydra or the Rat King. These are two weapons that fire in like one shot, and that's because they will be able to use up that 100% crit chance. So if you're using like a Hydra, for example, you can basically every single shot do like 150,000 damage or more, especially if you headshot. And that's a very, very powerful thing. If you're using First Shot Rio, you absolutely need Sledgehammer in the support. Obviously, I've said that he's identical to Ramirez, and her damage buff will boost your crit damage. So you'll have a 100% crit chance, which means you'll always be critting, and that crit will go up with that 17% damage. But you probably just want both of these, but Sledgehammer is definitely what you want if you're constantly critting. So that 75% damage buff to crit is only balanced because you don't always crit. But if you are always critting, he is absolutely the better option, no contest. The thing to say lastly about First Shot Rio is that you really need the correct weapon set, or else it's just not going to be that useful. So I'll actually show it in case you're... actually, here, I can just go to my schematics. I can actually show you in case you don't actually know what the Hydra is. I don't even think I have a Rat King schematic. I'm going to look for it real quick. But we do have the Hydra schematic right here, and that's because every time I've looked at it, the Hydra seems to have more straight up damage than the Rat King. But if you have either, both are great. So what I have here is you can see that instead of a crit rating crit damage loadout, I have a double crit damage loadout because I only ever use this weapon with First Shot Rio, and in that instance, you are always critting, and it makes for a very, very fantastic loadout. All right, lastly is one of the reasons that I'm happy to making this video when I am. So Breakbeat Wildcat is a hero so new I don't even know her name, and this Battle Beat loadout is something completely new. So Rock and Riff was added in a recent update. I don't even know which one. It's a very interesting thing to consider. I haven't decided whether or not it's great yet. That's up to you guys if you want to try stuff out. But I have found some good use for Breakbeat Wildcat in my support because all of the different Rock and Riff heroes have different forms of activation. Like the Outlander, for example, one of these guys, I think he's the black dude football player, or at least this chick. Harvesting Metal gives you the Rock and Riff wafers. You just eat those and it gives you the ability for a short while, and then there's a bunch of different options. I mean, point is, with her, eliminating 10 enemies in 9 seconds basically just buffs your damage by 50%. And that's in your support. So if you're killing a lot of enemies, and this does work from traps, by the way, any form of killing, defenders and traps, once the defense starts, you'll be hitting for 50% extra damage on top of Rescue Trooper Ramirez. So if your base damage is 100,000 DPS, she'll buff it by 50, she'll buff it by 50, so you got... that's separately. So 20,000 or 200,000 damage per second you would get in that instance. Very, very interesting hero. Again, that takes 10 enemies in 9 seconds, and then it's only decaying over 8 seconds. And from what I understand, decaying means that 50% will be decreasing until it's gone. I don't know exactly the slope of that, if it's, linear, or if it goes down to 40 and then straight down to 30 and then just sort of decays slowly. I don't know what that graph would look like, but it's something to consider. I've used her in my melee loadout because I have found that it's not too uncommon that I'll be killing a lot of enemies at once, but frankly, I usually don't get the bonus, and half the time I forget she's there, so I'm probably going to call that one a dead support perk on that front, but, again, that's up to you guys to decide. And now we're going to get into some of the more specialized heroes. So, starting with the shotgun heroes, there's only really 2 to talk about, and that's Buckshot Raptor, and Renegade Raider, Shrapnel Headhunter. So yeah, this is actually identical to Renegade Raider, if you guys didn't notice. Pretty cool hero to have and save the world, because some Battle Royale normies will come over and think you're super OG. But yeah, she's identical to Rescue Trooper Ramirez, and he's identical to Sledgehammer. Only difference being they affect shotguns and the other 2 affect, SMGs and assault rifles. That's pretty much it. There's nothing more to say about these 2 that I haven't said before. He's better in support, I think, from the math I've done. I prefer her in the lead. It doesn't really matter. There is something to talk about, especially with shotguns, and that's that buffing all of your damage by 50% means you're always doing more damage than normal, whereas making your crits do a ton of damage means only when you crit are you actually getting his bonus. So especially when it comes to shotguns, I would personally prefer to be doing 50% more damage always, rather than 225% on top of your normal crit damage sometimes. That's just up to me. You guys obviously can do whatever you want. This is an informational video to give you the tools you need to build whatever loadout you'd want. And then for pistols, there is more to talk about. I have a whole pistol guide in the link in the description below. But for pistols and soldiers, I think Quickdraw Calamity is the only one that actually directly buffs pistols. All of the other pistol heroes are over here in the pistol section, and I'll cover that in the pistol segment of this series. And Quickdraw Calamity is, well, does what she does. In the first 6 shots, she buffs it by 20%. 20%, 25, and then 16, 75. Pretty self-explanatory. She'll buff your first 6 shots. And that's an interesting thing to know because if you're looking to use her, you're going to want to make sure your pistol has 6 shots. So the Blaster Time Mini is now an SMG, but it used to be a pistol, so I'll use it for an example anyway. This is a weapon that has 35 bullets in the magazine, probably why they made it an SMG. So 29 of those shots would just be completely unaffected by Calamity. So if you're going to use her, the last word is basically like her pistol. That and the Judge. I don't think I have the Judge powered up, but it is that 6-shooter pistol. If you can already picture it in your head, then congratulations, you're winning. There it is. So the Judge is basically like her main pistol in all of her artwork, but the mag size is like 6, and that's exactly what she buffs. So it's kind of a great, combo deal there. She definitely works for whatever she does. And Calamity is an interesting one because Calamity comes with the support, the team perk that gives you a certain amount of damage if you switch your weapons in a certain amount of time. I don't even know exactly what it does because it's not exactly the most useful thing. I don't even know where it is, but it is interesting to note that all Mythic heroes come with their own team perk, and I can actually show a picture from our Discord if you guys want to join it, link below, where I'm gonna have to open the original, aren't I? Where I actually have a list of the initial V8.0 update where they added all of these. This is very old news, and I can link that patch in the description below, but this won't cover all of the new Mythic heroes, although this does cover a huge amount of the heroes already in the game. This stuff is pretty well hidden in the main game, so it's kind of nice to see that Quickdraw Calamity has Hot Swap and eliminations increase damage for every time you switch your guns. So it's just something to know that if you guys want to use that as a resource. But the only other Mythic hero that we'll be talking about in this video primarily is Wukong, but I can address Master Grenadier Ramirez. So that's it for Quickdraw Calamity. She's really the only one that actually buffs pistols. So next we'll talk about Wukong. And Wukong is one of those heroes that I put in the everything section alongside Stars and Stripes and Survivalist, and that's because you can pretty much stick him on any loadout: shotguns, pistols, ARs. You can put this on your any situation where you're killing enemies by hand, because every six kills will just make everything explode and do a ton of damage, and that's actually a pretty good loadout. I use him if there's like a spare spot and I don't really care, like that ninja loadout I mentioned earlier. This would probably be a better option. 6 kills, they just all explode in place, but that's just, it's I don't know. Every time I've ever put him in a loadout, I have found a better alternative, so he's just something to know. But as for the team perk, he's the guy that gives you Soaring Mantis. So if you like ninjas and you don't want Blast from the Past and you want to jump 3 times, he gives you some of the best mobility in the entire game. I have no idea why he gives you Soaring Mantis, but he does, and it's awesome, and that's something really important to know if you're looking to recruit Wukong. And then the other Mythic, just to cover her, is Master Grenadier Ramirez. She's exactly the example I had earlier with the frags, in that you really wouldn't want to use her unless you're making a grenade loadout, but if you do have her, then she's great for that. And her team perk that she gives you isn't really that great. It's the cool customer one. I've tried using it. I literally don't even know what it does. Like, I know what it does, but I didn't notice any different when I used it, so I don't know. She's not really worth her team perk, but I mean, if you're going to be using a grenade loadout, you definitely want that radius to be bigger. So the last 2 that we're going to talk about for the soldiers and for this video, yes, I've now decided that this is going to be a 4-part series, is Survivalist Jonesy and Stars and Stripes Jonesy. So I'll talk about Survivalist so we can end on a good note. Survivalist is great because it gives you passive healing. If you have him, use him. But skipping ahead to the Outlander video, if you have Crossbones Barret and you're okay with dedicating a part of your inventory to coconuts, coconuts is superior in every way. It heals 1/3 of your health instantly and then gives you passive healing, which is way better than even 2 campfires for 30 seconds, and it buffs your damage. So coconuts completely outclasses Survivalist, even though Survivalist is a fantastic early game thing because he is main game. He's quite easy to recruit and achieve just from normal llamas, and it's nice just passive healing, but he is completely outclassed once you get to the later game. In fact, you can completely replace Survivalist Jonesy with just using an adrenaline rush or spamming campfires in the world around you. So you don't really need to put him in your support anyway. And the good note to end on is Stars and Stripes Jonesy and Liteshow. So I'll put Liteshow in the timestamp down below just to say that we mentioned him. This is a bad perk for one reason and one reason only. It buffs your base magazine size. So if you have 30 bullets, this 30% will give you 9 extra bullets no matter what. So like my Silent Spectres, for example, they have 56 bullets because of their mag size perk. If I used him in support, that 56 will go up to like 65 or something like that. I think it's 56 in their mag size. It doesn't really matter what it is. The point is he's going to add 9 no matter what. Okay, it's 52. And I've known that it's also, it rounds down a little bit, but whenever there's an integer, it rounds down in this game. But in game, this gives you 61 bullets, and that's just bad. It's really like, he should give you 30% of your end magazine size so it's actually usable. But we don't really need to worry about that too much because Stars and Stripes Jonesy does that, and he does it better. So there's a little bit of math to explain here. What he does here is when they chance to refund ammo. Oh, that's interesting. I believe it used to say not to consume ammo. I'm not even sure what that used to say. But the point is, it just doesn't shoot. Meaning, that's how we got that LMG to shoot for 2 minutes straight, is because instead of just like saving a bullet or whatever, it just doesn't consume the ammo. So if you shoot 30 bullets, you have 30 bullets in your magazine and you use this guy in the support, you'll get about 41 bullets or so. And instead of using 41 ammo, you'll still use just 30. I hope that made any sense at all, but there's another way to explain why I just said that gave you an 11% bonus instead, or 11 extra bullets instead, and that's because this 24% works on bullets that you save. Let me walk you through this, okay? So if you have 100 bullets and you use this guy, on average, you will save 24 of those bullets. But then that 24% works on that 24, and then however many bullets you have left after that, the 24% applies to that. We've done the math for you. It's give or take about a 1.317 repeat, something like that. It works out to be about a 31% in the support. And as the lead, this works out to be about a 93.5% that it saves, and that's why that LMG shot for 2 minutes straight. It saved, of the 400 bullets, it saved 90% of them, so it basically shot another 400. Not to mention we had Liteshow in the support anyway, just to give us 30 extra bullets, and that's the most extreme example of why he's so broken. Literally broken in a bad way. I mean, we had a 400 round magazine, and he gave us 30 bullets. Anyway, Liteshow, Stars and Stripes Jonesy is absolutely the best mag size perk in the entire game, and what's unfortunate is I personally didn't understand this when I first read it, and everybody I've told about this has shown me that most people don't realize exactly what this does. I used to think it just, refunded ammo, meaning, like, if you shot 30 bullets, you would always shoot 30 bullets, but then you just get an X amount of ammo back. No. It gives you extra bullets, and it's amazing. So I actually use him in my main soldier loadout, and that's just complete preference. I take the damage hit, meaning I could be running Skull, I could be using Wukong for the damage, or the Skull Ranger for the extra 15% damage, anything, but I prefer to just have all that extra ammo, because sometimes you don't need extra damage, you just need a bigger magazine. Think about that for a little while. Alright, if you're watching this, then this is part 2 of my Best Heroes and Save the World series. If you want to go back and watch the soldier video, you're absolutely welcome to, but if you clicked on this, you're probably looking to learn about the best ninjas and save the world, and that's exactly what we're getting into. Right off the bat, these are my opinions backed by a lot of experience, so I do know what I'm talking about. I've played this game for hundreds of hours. I'm max level. What other accolades do you need? I don't know. I try to keep myself informed, and so I do feel qualified to talk about the best heroes here, and there will be timestamps in the description below for you guys to jump around at your leisure. If you're looking for a specific hero, they will hopefully be down there. If they're not down there, ask me in the comments below, because I'll explain to you why they're not. Meaning, if you want to know about Forged Fate, then it's probably because heavy attack efficiency isn't that great, but in my opinion. So we're gonna start right off the bat with Paleo Luna. That's probably why a lot of you are here. She is hands down the best melee hero in the entire game. She just is. That 16.5% of your current health and melee damage when you're using Blast from the Past is amazing. Blast from the Past for higher level players is well known to give you about 1 million HP or more depending on who you're playing with, and that roughly translates to about 165,000 extra damage per hit on top of how good your weapon already is. So it's very easy to get about 250,000 DPS when you're using something like the Spectral Blade, which is my personal favorite sword. This thing's already really good with the crits, and she just makes it that much better. So there's not much more I want to say about Paleo Luna. Her reputation should speak for herself. She's extremely good, and only really that useful if you're using her with Blast from the Past. If you're using another melee loadout, please, for the love of God, put her in your support and use Blast from the Past. There aren't any other heroes that'll buff your melee damage more than her, and you do need Blast from the Past to make that go all the way up. So I would recommend using Dino Southie and the chick that makes you very tough, because that 33 armor is huge. So next up on our list is Whiteout Fiona, and that's basically, I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but she's definitely something you want in the support when you're running any loadout that buffs swords or axes or scythes, because that 15 crit rating is almost exactly 15% crit chance, more or less. It's not exact. I'll link in the description below a list of how it slopes. It's an old Reddit post, but that is a very, very good one to use because it just buffs how often you crit. Assassin Sarah is basically what we used to use, if I can even find her. She is the only other hero in the entire game that I would even compare to Paleo Luna, because 18% of your weapon damage stacking 5 times gives you about a 90% damage buff if you're swinging a lot, but it cools down almost instantly. 1 stack for 5 seconds, so you need to be constantly attacking to get that damage buff. So most often you're probably only getting 20 or 36% or whatever it gives you. So she is a great hero, definitely nice in the support if you want some extra damage, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I'd be surprised if you even felt the difference. So that's it in terms of like raw damage. Ninjas mostly are best for swords. There are a lot of options to buff hardware, that'd be constructor side, and then if you want any specific axe loadouts or scythe loadouts, I'm sorry, I won't be talking about that in this video, and that's simply because this is about the best ninjas, and I've never had anybody convince me that a scythe loadout is amazing. I know the Steam Thrasher is a fantastic contender. This is something that with heavy attack efficiency, haha, Fate, you're coming back into the discussion, it can be very good to spin around and do a ton of damage, but that's still kind of a gimmick loadout, and I've not been convinced that that's really that powerful. If you have a fantastic loadout for that, let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about it. But we're going to move on to more ability-based discussion, because abilities are one of the biggest things that ninjas offer. In fact, I'll backtrack just a little bit here and say that Assassin Sarah, with her Smoke Bombs, Dragon Slash, and Throwing Stars, is quite a better loadout than Crescent Kick, Smoke Bomb, and Kunai Storm, because Kunai Storm isn't that great. I don't like it that much. You just jump in the air and do a little bit of damage. It's basically a weaker Smoke Bomb, and then Crescent Kick is Throwing Stars gives you range, Dragon Slash will kill everything in front of you, and Smoke Bomb, if used with Alchemist Sarah, we'll talk about her later, will actually heal you. So Assassin Sarah has a better loadout, but the damage from Paleo Luna is just, you can't compare. So in terms of abilities, let's talk about Dragon Scorch. He is hands down the best Dragon Slash hero if you just want a very powerful Dragon Slash. A very, very good second place is Snuggle Specialist Sarah, and I would never suggest using one without the other, because her Dragon Slash leaving that tail of energy means you're going to have that constant damage. You can, in fact, slash across a field of enemies and then create a wall of fire that they can't pass. Quite the spectacle. But Dragon Scorch is something I would recommend using the support, because that 3-tile range, 2-tile wide, also has some pretty good height. That's also, you can actually kill stuff over a tile above your head, even if you didn't know that. That Dragon Slash is huge. And they buffs the damage by 25% only in your commander. So if you want to use a Dragon Slash loadout, which in the recent event for Hit the Road is actually exactly what we did. We would complete that 140 no damage taken with Dragon Slash loadouts, because we would just swipe across a field of enemy and killed everything in front of us. And that was extremely effective. Again, I would highly suggest using Snuggle Specialist Sarah in the support with that, because it's very, very good. And there is another hero. I think I have her in the book. It might be the Sarah Hotep or something, but there is somebody that reduces the energy cost of Dragon Slash. The problem with that is Dragon Slash has about a 10-second cooldown, so no matter what, the energy is going to be back in time. So I don't know. If you're constantly using your Smoke Bombs and Throwing Stars, I guess you'd want less energy, but it's really not that big of a deal. Next up is Lynx Kassandra. So this is another one that I've sectioned off into the Kunai Storm loadout. And Kunai Storm I mentioned previously isn't really that powerful, and I stand by that. But if you're using Lynx Kassandra, something different happens. She has hang time, where now Kunai Storm has you floating in the air for 4 seconds doing 140% more damage. And that is more damage. So if you're already doing 100,000 DPS, when you use Kunai Storm in the air, you're now doing 240,000 DPS. It's very, very, very powerful. If you're ever using Lynx, I'd highly recommend jumping in the air in front of a Smasher, because they will melt in front of you, and it is amazing. And if you want to buff that Kunai Storm, you're going to want to talk about Bladestorm Enforcer, making your kunai blades explode. And then Dashing Hare Ken, which was that Easter dude, if you couldn't tell what event he was from, he also adds additional egg bombs on top of the kunai blades. So the daggers and the egg bombs are separate. So you've got about, whatever it is, I haven't counted, 5 to 10 projectiles going on the ground, exploding underneath you. That does some pretty good damage. I killed 3 mist monsters on stream today just doing that, and that was actually very, very powerful. And if you want to have that cooldown faster, you're going to want Overtaker Hiro. I know. 3 heroes dedicated to Kunai Storm in one loadout is probably a bit much, but the Kunai Storm eliminations can decrease your cooldown. Note, that is from the Kunai Storm itself, so if you're in the air shooting stuff, that won't reduce your cooldown as far as I'm understanding here. If that's wrong, then you'll find out on your own, and that's awesome. I would recommend trying him out anyway, but from my experience, that does not seem to be the case, because, I don't know, he was bugged when I first used him, so that might have skewed my current knowledge, but you know, it is at least worth mentioning that. And that's pretty much it in terms of the 3 Kunai Storm abilities that buff stuff that are worth talking about. Lynx is well, she's favored among the players for reasons that you could probably figure out on your own, but her damage is great too, and I use her quite often. In fact, I showed in my previous soldier video that I use her for, today I was messing around with the Soaring Mantis loadout, and that was pretty fun. This is exactly what I used, and it was a good time, and yeah, that hang time is an extremely awesome loadout. Next, we're going to talk about smoke bombs, which used to be very, very good because this guy, Infiltrator Ken, was bugged, and he was not only doing his commander perk, but he was like, the smoke bomb radius was way bigger than his commander perk is nowadays in the support. So you could use Dim Mock to reduce the cooldown by like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever it was, and he was very good. But that's no longer the case. However, if you want to use Dim Mock Mari, and then you want to make it bigger with Infiltrator Ken, maybe throw on Alchemist Sarah to heal you, smoke bombs can be pretty good, but that's pretty much it. It's not as good as it used to be, but I would recommend using him in the support, him in the lead to make those smoke bombs nice and big, Sarah to heal you, and then Dim Mock in the support, because you want that cooldown to go down. If you're going to have 3 or even 2 heroes buffing smoke bombs, you're going to want to be using them as often as possible. And that's it. I'm kind of going to gloss over Alchemist Sarah, but what there is to say is that the smoke bombs healing you is a fantastic option. In fact, just earlier when I showed my loadout, I used medicinal fumes, because if you're using a loadout where you're going to be in the action all the time, you're going to want to heal on the fly. And Adrenaline Rush is great for that. Campfires are great for that. Coconuts are best for that. But medicinal fumes are great because they also affect teammates, and they might even affect defenders. I don't know about that. That's just off the top of my head. And then lastly, for ninjas that I have on my list at least is where is he? Fleetfoot Ken. And he's one of those heroes where if you have a spare slot, then throwing him in your support to buff your 12.5% movement speed is nice. It's not that amazing. You're not going to notice it instantly, but it is something to have, and it is something that once you take it off, you're gonna miss that 12.5%. But in the lead, I wouldn't necessarily think that is necessary. Like, if you're doing something where you need to go fast, like repair the shelter where you're locating modules, having that 37.5% movement speed is amazing. If you are using the Baron, I don't actually have a Baron leveled up. I always have people give it to me. But if you have the Baron, that buffs your movement speed by 42%, and that does stack. So now you're running at 42% plus 37.5%. So rounding up, what is that? That's a great option if you just want to go fast. But since the Baron is literally better than he is, the Baron in your hand is better than he is in the support. So you do have some options for that one, but I figured he was worth mentioning. And that's pretty much it for the ninjas, you guys. There are some other loadouts, like the shurikens can be fun. That can be a very good loadout. Someday I might make a loadout on shurikens, because I've heard I've caught some wind from my friend. That means 2 things: about how throwing stars can be really, really good, but they're not really like good enough to talk about in this video. So I'm just gonna leave that as to be continued if I ever make a video on that. And that's it for ninjas, you guys. All right. For you guys, it's a fresh new video. For me, it's quite the session because I just talked about soldiers and ninjas. If you guys haven't checked out those videos, they'll be linked below. You should check them out right now. If you're watching in the future, then the constructor video should be linked below as well. But today, we're going to be talking about the best Outlanders in Fortnite Save the World. And I'm going to say what I say every single time. These are my opinions based on a lot of experience. I've used Outlanders for a very long time. I'm aware of what most of the best ones do, meaning like I don't investigate every hero, but if it's good enough to be good, then I've heard of it. and that's basically it. Timestamps will be linked in the description below if you guys want to check out a certain hero. With nothing else in the way for me to talk, let's get into Archaeolo-Jess. So Archaeolo-Jess and Fossil Southie are basically the two crown Outlanders for farming in this game. There are some people who like the idea of decreasing your phase shift, and there is instead of flash AC, there are certain loadouts where the phase shift immediately brings back your punch time. I think those are fairly jarring, and I don't personally recommend those, but it is an option. So what I'll be talking about here is Archaeolo-Jess right off the bat, because she was the classic new hero rework best farmer, because she reduces your anti-material charge by 128%, which basically brings it from 50 down to like I think 18 or something. It's very cheap, which means you can punch over and over and over again, and that costs a lot of energy, and that's why Fossil Southie was such a fantastic addition to the game. When he first released, he gave you 12 energy per second in the support, just like his commander. They patched that, which means with Archaeolo-Jess in the lead, you can pretty much punch 5 times before you're out. And with Fossil Southie in the lead, you can punch about 6 times. Because even though you're getting 3 times as much energy, your cost is, it's much more expensive to punch. So he gives you a lot of energy back, and she reduces the energy per use. So it really depends on which one you want to use. So Fossil Southie, you'll get another punch if you're spamming, but in either situation, you will be constantly regenerating energy so long as you're using Blast from the Past, which is pretty much the only reason he's good. When shield is depleted, so unless you're constantly taking damage and breaking your shield, you're going to want to have Blast from the Past. And if you're farming, you definitely want Blast from the Past, just because not only will you be stronger in battle, but you won't have to worry about prepping this guy. So you're going to want to have him set up properly. And there is something else to note, and that's that if you're using Archaeolo-Jess in your lead, not only will you be a nice thick archaeology lady, but you'll have Southie in the support being one of your 2 dino heroes to buff Blast from the Past. So you can have him and say Iza to make you stronger, and then you'll have 3 other heroes that you can put in your support. Whereas with him in the lead, you're going to have 2 dino heroes in your support, so you won't have as many options. And that's just something to consider. But both of these are very, very good for allowing your anti-material charge to be as good as it possibly can be. And then Crossbones Barret is something I want to talk about right off the bat. Usually I order the heroes to have the all-around heroes to be at the very last, but I want to talk about him so much because he is probably one of the most important heroes in the entire game, because going coconuts is the best healing method in the entire game. Going coconuts gives you about a third of your health. So if you're using Blast in the Past, 1 coconut will give you about 300,000 HP, depending on how much HP you have, and that's huge. That is so amazing to pop in the middle of a fight, and not to mention it gives you about 30 seconds of healing afterwards. That is a little bit faster than 2 campfires, and it buffs your damage by 16%. Coconuts, they just do everything for you. They just give you health and damage and another thing in your inventory slot, so you can only have 2 weapons instead. But he is one of the most important heroes in the entire game, and he's an Outlander. So here he is in this video. You should have him. If you don't have him, you should use a voucher. If you can't use a voucher, then you should email Epic telling them to re-release him, because he was locked behind the pirate event and should not have been, because this is such a powerful perk to have. Next, we're going to talk about Phase Shift and Recon Scout Eagle Eye, Phase Scout Jess, and Flash AC. All 3 of these guys just buff your phase shifts in various ways. If you're looking to move around fast, these are fantastic options. I honestly don't have much to say beyond that, but there you go. If you're looting very fast, these are definitely 3 contenders you want to have. But I mean, that's basically it. They all pretty much buff phase shift in various ways and let you move faster. If you're farming, you're also going to want Pathfinder Jess. Believe it or not, in my original notes for this video, I didn't even have her listed because I completely forgot about her. But Pathfinder Jess does exactly that. But you can see, she buffs your pickaxe damage by a lot. In the lead, she's actually one of the potential contenders for your main farming hero because that 50% pickaxe damage is huge. You can two-shot a lot of builds by using that. But I haven't found that to be the way that I like to farm. I like to just punch stuff and have it explode in front of me. It's extremely satisfying. But I definitely put her in the support because work usually can take about a hit off of your, like one smack off your mining speed. Sometimes it'll take two if you're breaking down a big wall. But it's just something that's very nice to have in general. Especially since a lot of the ores in the highest twine zones right now leave you at about 35 health. Work is very, very nice to just have to supplement that. And I'm going to dedicate this part of the video to Sanguine Dusk, which is one of my old favorites. Before the hero rework, she had a lot of other abilities that made her one of the best heroes in the entire game. But since then, her phase shift healing you has been nerfed quite considerably. But if you have an extra slot and you happen to have Sanguine Dusk, especially since as I'm recording this, it's early October and Halloween, the official day is coming up and the event for these guys are going to be re-released, and Sanguine Dusk might be joining us soon. And you might want to pick her up just because she'll heal you in the middle of battle. But as I said earlier, coconuts are so much more powerful, it's not even funny. And to phase through enemies means you basically need to put yourself in combat, so it's something that you'd want to kind of take into account. Next, we're going to talk about pistols. And that's one of those interesting things where pistols were talked about in my soldier video, and I brought up Calamity. And pistols are almost universally locked behind Outlanders for some reason. And that's where we're going to talk about Jess and where's the other dude? Ranger Deadeye, who for some reason I haven't made 130. And the last one, which is Gunblazer Southie. So Gunblazer Southie is right here. There you go. If you're going to use pistols, I have a whole video in the description below on the best pistol loadout where I get way more in depth with pistols. But he buffs your pistol damage by effectively double for 4 seconds after you phase shift. Ranger Deadeye is exactly the same thing as Rescue Trooper Ramirez and Havoc and Sledgehammer. These two are exact doppelgangers. They basically have the same bonuses, but for pistols. I personally prefer Jess because, as I've said in previous videos, I like to use the female characters just because that's just, you know, smaller character model. It's how I play. Ranger Deadeye is, you know, same thing as, you know, you just buff your damage. What else can I say about pistols, you guys? Now let's talk about Sub-Zero Zenith, which is by far the most unique hero that I'm going to be talking about in today's video. How do I even get into this one? Sniper critical hits applies Water Affliction, dealing water damage for 3 seconds. That's good, I guess, if you're in a fire zone, but it's really good in your commander perk. They not only apply the affliction damage, but they freeze them in place. So if you have a high enough firing sniper rifle with a decent enough crit chance, you will be freezing enemies in place. That's a pretty good combo to have, I'm not gonna lie. He's definitely, if you're gonna be using this, you're going to want some sniper buffing heroes like Redline Ramirez or Rabbit Dude. These two are, again, somewhat doppelgangers. Not exactly in the Redline Ramirez category, but, you know, they buff your sniper damage. And if you're going to be using a hero dedicated to doing sniper damage, then you're going to want that. That being said, you're not exactly doing sniper damage. What you're doing in this case is freezing stuff in place, which applies to smashers and mini-bosses, not mini-bosses, smashers and the other mist monsters and regular enemies and fatties. And if you use something like the, do I even have it? I think I have it to put in the book. It's the, what is it? The Vacuum Tube Sniper Rifle. I think this is one of the fastest firing snipers in the entire game, with a 15% base crit chance. So if you put even double crit rating on this, you effectively have a freeze ray gun, and Sub-Zero Zenith allows you to make that possible. So definitely a good hero to have if you want to go for that really wonky loadout, but I put him lastly here just because it's not exactly, it's not exactly metagame. And that's pretty much it for the Outlanders, you guys. There aren't too many that are really worth mentioning. Outlanders are namely best for, oddly enough, their pistol heroes and their farming abilities, and Crossbones Barret is his own deal with his coconuts. Alright, let's go ahead and do something that I have never before done on my channel before. Believe it or not, I have never talked about constructors in a video before, and that's personally speaking because I think that they are really boring. Constructors, you almost can't go wrong, and no matter what loadout you use, they're going to be good to to use. And most people who actually understand constructors know that they are know pretty much what they're doing. So before I get into it, let me just say that this is my opinion based on a lot of experience. I'm not the most biggest fan of constructors, but I do know which ones are good and which ones are not. And I'm going to be talking about the best ones, not necessarily all of them. And let's get straight into it. So Mega Base Kyle is probably my favorite one to start with, and that's because he has everything you would want from a constructor. He not only increases the base by a huge amount, that's 3 in every direction, by the way, so if you put that down, that's a huge ring of added effectiveness. But he also adds the Supercharged Traps ability, meaning in your team perk, if you select Supercharged Traps, every single constructor will add a 6.5% damage buff to your traps, meaning at best, it's going to be doing about 32.5% extra damage because of supercharged traps. So if you're trying to buff a trap tunnel, 8.5, my bad. If you're trying to buff a trap tunnel, then this guy is exactly the way to do it. That's a 32.5% bonus. Oh, this just in, I checked my math after that mistake because I was certain it was 6.5% before, but apparently it's 8.5%. They might have buffed him at some point, but regardless, 8.5% means all 5 constructors in your support would be doing 42.5% extra damage if you have all of these filled out. So 42.5% extra damage for your traps is not a bad deal. And he's not everybody's main constructor, because if you're trying to do... let's talk about what constructors usually do. If you're trying to buff traps, Mega Base is great. If you're trying to build your walls as strong as possible, Base Kyle is what you need. If you're trying to do something like counter Exploding Death Bomb, which is a stupid team perk, a stupid modifier, I don't do missions with that, but if I have to, I like to use Power-Based Nox, because he will buff 11% of your max health every 10 seconds, which means you can mostly counteract that, but I'll get into them more specifically later. Mega Base Kyle is great for that team perk, so if you don't have him recruited, you should. Supercharged Traps is absolutely a super powerful thing for the later game, and let's move on to Base Kyle. I suppose. It doesn't really matter where we go next, because any Kyle constructor is pretty much going to be awesome. Almost all of them are really, really nice to have. But Base Kyle is one of the most infamous because buffing your building health by 84% is huge. In the later game, that 3-tier medal can get into like the 20,000s if you use Lofty Architecture here, and that's just a really, really great thing. I always, like I said, you can't go wrong with constructors. I was gonna say I always throw him in my support, but like you could throw him in the support, you can put Mega Base in for the extra range. Constructors are always great in support. You can just mix and match constructors nowadays, and I think constructors were one of the class loadouts that the class of heroes that got best affected by the hero rework back in March or May or whenever that was, whenever they just redid every single hero in the entire game. Link below to that video. Constructors became mixed and matchable. You can just construct, if you will, your perfect loadout based on constructors, and that's again why I never did a video on it, because I think it's fairly intuitive. But let's just continue with the bases. Power-based Nox is something that's very important to understand exactly how he works. So he heals it based on a percent every 10 seconds, so 4 and 11 respective to your standard and commander perk. If you want to get the absolute most out of him, you need to make that percent as useful as possible, meaning if you're trying to do a hard mission where your base is going to be attacked, then you want to have your metal or brick walls all the way maxed out, because if you only have 1,000, this is only going to give you 110 health, but if you have 10,000 health, this is going to give you 1,100 every heal, and that's a big difference, and those really are the differences. I mean, like metal, I don't even know what it is, 1,700, something like that, but if you max it out, it's in the 10,000s, I know that for sure. Or at least very close to it. So you want to max that stuff out to get the most out of Power-Based Nox, and that's why you typically want to use him in the Commander perk if you're going to be needing him. And it is important to note that some of these do stack. Not every constructor ability stacks to my knowledge, but I have seen Lofty Architecture take priority. Even after you place your base, somebody comes in with Lofty Architecture and your walls are going to get a lot stronger. So that's why you'd probably want to put Mega Base down, get the range of the base set, and then Base Kyle on top of that, somebody with Power-Based Nox. You're about to build a very, very, very strong castle right there. And if you're going to do that, we're going to skip the base real quick, Heavy Base Kyle. We're going to skip him real quick and talk about Electropulse Penny. And that basically makes it so that anytime your structure is attacked, they hit themselves. Simple as that. So if you're going to be using, a big base, a strong base, a healing base, Electropulse Penny basically makes the base work for you. I use her and any combination of the other constructors whenever I'm doing easy V-Buck missions because I can just slap down a base and not fire a bullet. The other way to do that is Thunder Thora, but we'll get to her after Heavy Base Kyle. Heavy Base Kyle, when I said that all the Kyles are good, was probably the exception. Feel the Base is, I haven't found that to be amazing, but after enemies are killed standing on your structure, it charges it, and after 30 charges, it explodes, dealing a little bit of extra damage. That 39 base energy damage isn't insane, and I haven't seen it. I haven't ever actually noticed it doing damage. I know it does. The fact that I haven't noticed doesn't give me a lot of confidence in saying that it's, it's that great. But I see it used a lot, so I figured it was worth mentioning. And that was Thunder Thora being skipped. Thunder Thora is one of the most overrated constructors in the entire game. A lot of people use her because Electrified Floors is great. It makes people take damage when they're standing on it. It makes them take a very tiny amount of damage. I haven't ever noticed this making a difference in any serious mission ever. It's only every 5 seconds, and 12.5 isn't a lot, and you definitely don't want to use her as your commander. There are so many better options, but what I do use her for is what I mentioned is those early missions. You put on Mega Base Kyle, and then Electropulse Penny so that they attack the base and hurt themselves, and then Thunder Thora. All you gotta do is spread out the floor in like a Stonewood mission, and the mission will do itself. Everything will die as soon as they touch the tiles. It's marvelous. Next up is Ice King. Ice King is definitely the kind of hero that you can throw into a support. Making them have snared is nice because snare snacks I'm gonna leave that in. Snare stacks in this game. So whenever you have wooden floor spikes, it pricks them and then they walk slower, and then you hit them with a slowed and snared weapon that stacks, and then this guy's 50% stacks on top of that. You can basically make a Smasher's charge run in place if you use all three of those combined. So, whoa, look, it's Editing Beast for the first time in this series because I forgot something so major that I'm pretty embarrassed by it. And that's that the Ice King, I only covered his support bonuses, and that's because I wanted to lead into the fact that he is an amazing commander. If used appropriately, especially if you use wall spikes or something, the way that his commander perk works is when enemies smash your walls, they actually freeze themselves in place and take frost damage in the process. So if you stack something like Electropulse Penny and the wooden wall spikes or the wall spikes, you can make it so that enemies will kill themselves very, very effectively on your walls. Then you throw in some lofty architecture, some healing builds, Mega Base to make it bigger. You can basically make a fortress. So his Frozen Castle ability is very aptly named, and he is a very, very good hero in the lead. And that's why I say he's very good in support, but he's even better if you use him correctly as a commander. If you're using the Ice King and Floor Spikes, go in there with your slowed and snared weapons and tap on Smashers. They will spend way more time inside of your tunnels. But if they get too close to you, you're going to want Bomb Squad Kyle. I don't need to explain this, do I? Armor is good. What I can't explain is my understanding of armor. That's not a percent. So the way that 22 works is the idea is that it is a percent, but it's kind of not. And that's that if you're taking damage, your normal death rate, call it 100, armor will make it 122. So it's not, it is a percent, but I don't, as I've been told, it doesn't exactly work that way. It just adds survivability. I don't even know the factors for this. All I know is if you want to live longer and be stronger, use him. But Iza is so important, and I'm actually disappointed in myself because she was the #1 constructor on my list to talk about, and here we are 9 minutes in, and I haven't even mentioned her. Although I have mentioned her in my Soldiers, Ninjas, and Outlander guides, link below, but she is probably one of the best heroes in the entire game because of Blast from the Past. Blast from the Past is that team perk that gives you 3 times health, and you need 2 Dino heroes. I use her almost every single time I need that to be activated because that 33 armor is great. And as I do understand, I believe it's stacked. So if you use her and Bomb Squad Kyle together, especially with Bomb Squad Kyle as your lead, Blast from the Past, her in the support, you can basically be a tank. Although him plus her would be 99, but her with the lead and him in the support would be 122. So she's a dinosaur, but he has a bomb suit. I guess dinosaurs are stronger. Either or, both are great. I've never personally used Bomb Squad Kyle because of Prehistoric Iza, but I mean, he's an option. You can throw him on there. He's basically like the B team and she's the A team. Now, towards the end here, I wanted to mention not Controller Harper, although I'm going to throw her into this video anyway, because this decoy cooldown is huge. If you're ever doing a stall tactic where you need stuff to be distracted a lot, decoys are great, and she's what you want. There's not much more I could say about that, but there you go, decoys. I wanted to talk about Machinist Harper, wherever she went. She's up here. Machinist Harper is... I guess the only time you'd ever use her is Endurance or Storm Shield defenses. So increasing the trap durability is never going to be useful in a conventional mission. If it ever is useful in a conventional mission, either you're using way too many traps or you're doing something in a really weird way. I've never needed her in a conventional mission because your traps are typically going to survive an 8-minute defense. But if you're doing Endurance or a Storm Shield defense where your traps are going to be getting hit hard for hours at a time, using her, especially as a commander, is going to make them last 52.5% longer, which is considerable. If a gas trap can fire 40 times, I don't think that's its durability, but for the sake of conversation, if it can fire 40 times, this basically makes it like 60 sometimes, 62 times, something like that. That's a pretty good deal. That lasts for a lot longer, and that's pretty much the only time you'd ever need Machinist Harper. I think we had talks of we did use her in, was it Frost Knight? I don't know. We use her in some situation. I don't know if she had that ability before the hero rework, which is when Frost Knight occurred. Point being, she is very, very useful if you absolutely know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, Warden Kyle is something I wanted to mention just because if you don't have a ton of constructor options, but you happen to have Warden Kyle, it makes it so that you and your allies heal when you stand on the base. That's nice to have. It's not great. Even Survivalist is better, and if you have a base set up, you should probably have traps killing stuff, so Survivalist should be active anyway, but it is an option if you want to just have passive healing. Again, he is only recommended if you have no other options. Even a Campfire would do better than that. A Campfire plus Machinist Harper for that added durability, it would be probably better than Warden Kyle, but I wanted to mention him because he's such a basic and, moderately helpful hero. And lastly, I'm going to end it on a very fun note, and that is Demolitionist Penny. This is your hero in the game that will buff your rockets. I think it's the only hero in the entire game that buffs rockets, but there she is. 50% added damage on a Santa's Little Helper means, let's see actually. My Santa's Little Helper, when I'm alone, not inside of a group, is hitting for 265,000. So when I was in a group, mine was hitting for about 500,000, and she buffs your base damage. So that was adding about 130,000 to that. So I was hitting for about 650,000 damage per shot on that rocket launcher. And so Demolitionist Penny is very, very fun if you're only using rocket launchers. And if you can afford that, that is an extremely fun way to play. And lastly, on top of her, she was my last point, but 8-Bit Demo is worth mentioning because he reduces durability after ability is cast, but I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. I would love it if somebody could explain it in the comments. Check first. If somebody else has explained it, don't spam the comments with this, but I'm not even entirely sure what this means. After ability cast, I assume that means after you put your base down, but I don't know if that 6 uses of the durability resets after a reload, or if it's only every time you move your base. Regardless, if you are using rockets only, you're going to want that 40% less durability because, rockets are very, very expensive and they go out fast. In fact, that Santa's Little Helper I use for an example, I have a durability perk on there and it only lasts for about 22 or 23 shots. So 40% would mean that would last for, 28, 30 shots instead. And that's kind of a nice option if that's even possible. But again, I don't even fully understand how he works and it has prevented me from using him in the past. That's it, everybody. Those are my picks for the best constructors in the entire game. And also the first time I've ever talked about them in a dedicated video. So hopefully this is useful to some of you. Let me know if you learned anything. I like to hear about that stuff because whenever I toss these videos out, they just kind of go out into the wind and then some of them get views and some of them don't. But if you tell me if it helped you or not, it really does make my day to hear about that. So let me know if I missed anything. Let me know if I got anything wrong. Leave them in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is the conclusion of my 4-part series on all of the best heroes in Save the World. I separated it because as of recording this, I think I've got over an hour of footage. So if you made it through all of this, and this is the 4th video you've watched, and you've made it through all 4 of these videos, I want you to leave a comment below saying Controller Harper's green jacket is really, really fetch. I want it worded just like that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a nice day.